Retail service workers, what's the best instant karma you've seen happen to a rude customer? Worked at a telecom in Canada. I'm no longer an employee, thank God. Lady comes in with a broken iPhone and is demanding to get a new one for free. If you don't know, in Canada, the iPhone 6S is going for about $400 up front on a 2-year contract at a minimum $80 plan. She had a good plan, but wanted it for free. She called up our loyalty team in store and spent the next 2 hours screaming at them. Finally, they agree to a deal, and she's getting it for $0. She looks at me and goes, "I do not want a case, and Apple Care is a scam." We work on commission, so this essentially meant I was getting nothing and ruining my numbers. She keeps telling me to hurry up through the setup, and I was trying to get them out of the store with everything transferred over and set up. She grabs the phone and starts marching off, saying I was a terrible employee. She gets 3 steps out of the store and drops the phone. Shattered screen and white screen of death. She ran back in asking what I can do. I shrug and went, "Sorry, but Apple Care sure would have helped, huh?" Next story. As a teenager, I was working part-time at a convenience store. I was being trained by the late-night cashier. This dude comes in and grabs a bunch of cans of vegetables and such, and comes to the counter and stacks the cans in a very specific way, like a weird kind of pyramid on the counter. As the experienced cashier, my trainer, takes each can off the pyramid and rings it up, she reaches the end of the stack and we realize that the weirdo has his chicken out and has it laying on the counter behind the cans. Without saying a word, the trainer grabs one of the big heavy metal cans of beans and slams it down as hard as she can on the guy's privates. He screamed an incredible scream of searing pain, grabbed his privates, and ran out of the store. She, to me, calmly, "You get all kinds on the late shift." Next story. Standing at the counter of the pizza place I work at, lady storms in and slams a pizza down on the counter. "This isn't the effing pizza I ordered. What the hell are you going to do about it?" she asked. I look at the pizza and then at my buddy Nick and turn back to her and say, "Nothing." She then goes on a long rant telling me how we're going to be fired, how stupid and incompetent we were. She basically told me I must be retarded, then asked why the hell we weren't going to do anything. I said, quote, "Because that pizza came from the pizza shop across the street." I think she actually managed to shrink in size and slink out, looking so pathetic and beaten, I almost felt bad for laughing till tears dripped down my face as she slunk off. Next story. Worked at Best Buy 10 or so years ago. This happened on Black Friday. Most of the customers were in bad moods since they'd been waiting hours to come in and stand in more lines. But this one lady was a raging female dog. After yelling at everyone in my department about how she needed the laptop that was on sale despite it being sold out, she proceeds to tell us she'll have the store closed down because she works with the city and knows the fire marshal and we have too many people in the store. So she calls him, we tell her to leave, and nothing happens to the store. However, we called them as well to report what she'd said, and she got fired from her job for abuse of power. Yeah, I don't know why people actually think that this will work in real life. The whole, I know a guy that can, close this place down routine, or I know the manager, usually that ends up backfiring. That's the only stuff you hear about in movies and people that are lying. Next story. Working the window at McDonald's late night. Guy orders whatever and pulls up to the window. I'm cooking and handling the window, so I wasn't there when the customer pulled up. When I walked up to the window, I didn't see the effer with trash on his lap. I open the window to take his card/cash and he throws a bag of trash at me. I take a step back, bothered that I just got trash thrown at me, and I watch his car speed off. I'm pissed, but there's nothing I can do. A couple of seconds later, I hear a small bang of metal on metal. I walk to the lobby and look out the windows. The douchebag slammed into a police cruiser who was about to loop around and use the drive-thru himself. Of course, I also went to tell the officer what just happened inside. Next story. More than a few decades ago, I worked at Denny's. I had 2 male customers that decided to dine and dash, got their license plate number and reported it to the cops and jokingly mentioned that they didn't even tip. Later that night, they got pulled over for DUI. Cops recognized license plate number from the report, brought them both back to the restaurant and forced them to pay the bill. After he was done paying, the cop just stood there and looked at them and said, "Well?" The guy sheepishly handed me my tip. Next story. Guy comes in and is being a complete a-hole, not wanting to show ID to buy beer even though he looked 20 at the oldest. Constantly yelling and swearing. He also had parked in the handicap spot despite not having handicap tags or plates on his car. One of my regular customers, who's a sheriff deputy, was also in the store. saw how the guy was acting, saw where he was parked, went out, got his ticket book, and wrote the guy a ticket. Guy realized he wasn't getting his beer, went outside to find he was getting ticketed. I could not stop laughing. Next story. I caught a late flight one night and wound up at the rental car thing. I had about a 2-hour drive to my destination and work to do the next day. I was also dressed for business, which I find helps enormously in these situations. The guy in front of me and his wife apparently had the biggest crisis of their lives in that line. I wasn't really clear on what was happening, but it seems like their reservation was lost, or they were dissatisfied, or something. It took a good 15 or 20 minutes before they stomped off in a huff and I made it to the desk. The lady at the counter and I shared a look of mutual exhaustion before I promptly gave her my name, license, and credit card. After she processed the rental, she gave me the keys and said, "Drive safely," with a clear undertone of, "Don't get caught." I figured out what she meant when I got to the stall and found the brand new Mustang she had spontaneously upgraded me to. Little did she know, I drive like an old lady, but it's little gestures like that that give me some hope for the world. Next story. I worked at a restaurant that was very popular for brunch, and Mother's Day was probably our busiest day of the year. I had a customer call the evening before and asked for a table for 6, and he was incredibly rude when I informed him that this would simply be an impossibility. He kept getting more and more worked up, asking me to speak to my manager. At first, I didn't want to pass the phone over. My manager wasn't the nicest guy, and we were in the middle of a busy dinner shift. But my manager came up behind me and demanded to know why I had been on the phone for so long. I was like, F it, this customer isn't going to listen to me anyways, and gave the phone to Mac. Mac asked how he could help, listened for about 15 seconds before telling this dude something like, "So you're tying up my hostess in the middle of dinner even though she's already told you nicely that we can't fit you and your goddamn family in the night before our busiest day of the year? F your buddy," and hung up the phone. Yeah, you always got to leave it up to the manager to roll up the sleeves and handle the dirty work like this. And as like an underling, there's nothing more satisfying than knowing that your manager's got your back. So yeah, good story. Next story. Currently at a consignment shop. We have 2 stories of furniture, and it's only things people bring in for us to sell for some of the profit. A lady came in with her son. He was 5 or 6, and she looked around. We had 2 bar stools, and she came up to the desk and said, "I'd like to order 2 more of these bar stools." I smiled and said, "We can't do that. Those belong to someone, and that's all they had to consign with us." She looks back and says, "Well, why the F can't you order ones like this? I'm sure you can find them online." I clench my teeth and smile again, saying, "Ma'am, we really can't do that. If you'd like to go online, you're more than welcome to look for yourself, but I can't help you and I'm sorry." She huffed and started walking to the door, talking about getting me fired, making a horrible review of this place. She then got a nice big face full of door. It's a push door, and it was locked. She looks at me and screams, "Why the F is it locked?" I have no idea. Then her son looks at her and says, "Mommy, you were mean to that lady, so I don't want to go till you say sorry." Best kid ever. Next story. I'm not sure if being a public defender counts as a retail or service worker, but considering that I provide criminal defense to indigent clients facing deprivation of their rights and freedom, I'll consider it a service nonetheless. I was representing a scumbag client who was a massive meth head who got high and beat the hell out of her 8-year-old daughter with her belt after she accidentally broke mommy's meth pipe. She was charged with child cruelty and possession of meth, and given her criminal record, the DA's plea offer was 3 years in prison. Needless to say, my client didn't want to go to prison for, quote, giving that idiot what she deserved, and started freaking out at me when I told her that's the best offer I was going to get from the DA, and it was either accept that offer or go to trial. I further pointed out the mountain of evidence against her, primarily the photographs of her daughter's injuries, the bloody belt that was recovered from her bedroom, the broken meth pipe with meth residue in it, and the fact that her daughter was going to testify against her at trial. After she was done cursing me out, calling me a public pretender, and every other derogatory name she could think of, she fired me and somehow managed to hire a private attorney for the low price of $8,000. I still don't know how she managed to come up with that, but I have plenty of reliable guesses. The private attorney guaranteed her that he could win her case at trial, and that's exactly what she chose to do. Long story short, the private attorney clearly never even read this woman's file before trial. The trial lasted roughly 3 hours. The jury was literally out for only 5 minutes, and the judge sentenced her to 10 years of prison. It was a good day. Next story. It wasn't the customer, it was the manager. She was awful. She was rude, intentionally picked out favorites, and gave them presents in front of everyone, even when they didn't like her and tried to avoid it. Messed up schedules on purpose for people she didn't like, etc., etc. Worst manager ever. So there was a huge storm coming in, and people were really worried about it. Like the news telling people to stay home, other businesses closing, etc. So it was up to her to either keep our store open or close it. Of course, she kept it open. Because schools closed, only half our scheduled employees showed up. The rest called in, and she called her favorites and told them they didn't have to come in. Well, as the 5 of us who showed up were standing there, watching out the front windows, there were 0 customers, she starts yelling at us, threatening to write us all up, etc. And we're like, no one is here. All the work is done. We're watching the wind bend trees over and worried about if we're safe / will be able to get home. Right about this time, we hear a super loud crashing noise. Cha-chung, 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 wham! As the industrial air conditioner on top of the building got blown off, like it rolled along the roof, then went flying into the parking lot, right onto her car. It was so perfect, it was surreal. Dead center, smashed her car flat. Like if she had been in it, she would have died. And it only happened because she parked right up by the building, where we had specifically been told not to park. All our cars were out in the farthest corner of the lot. We later found out her car wasn't paid off. It was some stupidly expensive BMW or something, and her insurance didn't cover the damage because it was an act of God. Next story. I worked for an online banking help desk, and this 18-year-old phoned up saying he had seen a transaction for £7 to allpay.net, and because he didn't recognize it, he decided the bank were robbing him of £7, and that I was in on it, and I was a thieving little prick. Then he gets his dad on the phone, who stuck up for his crap of a son, saying I was a pathetic scumbag for stealing £7 off an 18-year-old boy, even though it was a debit card transaction and I simply worked in the department which helped people use online banking. But anyway, I phoned our debit card services to see if they could give any more information, and boy could they. I then had the pleasure of relaying back to this little crap's equally crappy father the following. Hi sir, thanks for holding. I've checked with our debit card services team, and I now understand why your son would not have recognized the payee allpay.net. That's a deliberately vague term used for discretion when the customer has subscribed to online adult content. That's what it was for. Your son has been paying for online adult content. Would you like to pop him back on the phone so I can tell him it's a payment for his adult content, or will you pass on the information? The father just muttered that the issue did not require any further investigation, thanked me for looking into it, and hung up. Yeah, you gotta love code words. Busted big time, so he was just trying to get a free £7, and instead, that probably didn't end well for him. Although he's 18, so he's grown, who knows. Next story. Former cell phone industry worker. We have to pitch insurance in case every time you get a new phone. We have to. You can actually be fired from some carriers for refusing to partake in making these suggestions. During a normal new line setup, this insanely rude woman is hostile about every part of the exchange. Her credit is absolute dog crap, so she has to pay a gnarly deposit and more of the phone up front, and that's somehow my fault. Finalizing everything before she's completely rung up, I casually offer the same thing I do to literally everyone getting a new phone. Which insurance plan are you interested in? And what kinds of cases have you looked at? Apparently, that was the most offensive thing she's ever heard in her life. She immediately raises her voice and makes it really uncomfortable for me because apparently I'm only accusing her of being clumsy since she's black, and I didn't charge her white friend near as much, and I'm just a racist blah blah super fun. I kept my composure and tried calmly explaining everything. Even tried to let her know that I have to offer that to everyone and I couldn't get anything across. Eventually, my coworker lets me know he's got this. We swap places and finish each other's sales. As she steps out of the store looking down at the Galaxy Note 3 she had just spent a total of $500-something to get, she trips, eats crap, and smashes the screen. Comes back in asking for help after raising hell, and we got to be all shruggy. You know, as they say when it comes to insurance, it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it, especially when it comes to technology. As much as people today are dependent on technology, you have to have insurance. It's not a scam, I promise you. Next story. Working drive-thru at a Tim Hortons, and some a-hole in a massive black truck parked too far away from the window and expected me to lean super far out to give him his change. He was real impatient and just really rude. I just shook my head, and so he gets all pissed off and finally gets out of the truck and the door shut behind him. It was locked and he sat there for like 15 minutes and we had to call a tow truck. Sure, it pissed off everyone behind him, but at least they were all pissed off at him and not at us. He acted like it was the biggest embarrassment of his life. Next story. Warehouse worker here. Customers have to show a card to shop, and even though we're not technically a grocery store, we don't allow pets. One dude tried to power walk past the employee at the entrance door holding a big pit bull puppy on a leash. We stopped him and told him he couldn't bring his dog inside, and he lost it. He's our best customer, and he's there 5 times a week, and he owns stock, blah blah blah. Whatever. He demanded to know why we don't allow dogs. We explained how it's a food safety issue, especially with an untrained puppy. At this point, our manager came over and just waved him through, because no backbone/customer is always right. Well, not even 5 minutes later, this dog squats in the middle of the main aisle and pees, followed by poop. The man turned so red and dragged the dog towards the exit, abandoning his groceries. We stopped him and asked him nicely to please clean up after his pup. That's the reason we don't allow them, sir. Next story. I work at a hotel's front desk. One day, we had an Armenian guest who was claiming his room was not set up to his standards and decided to make a big deal about it the next morning. He was so rude to the point of almost making a coworker cry of desperation because she refused to compensate the night as his arguments seemed really fake and invalid. Once he saw he was not going to get anything back, he threw his receipt on the floor and power walked his way out into a very clean glass door that was recently cleaned. His sunglasses broke, causing a small cut on the upper part of his nose. My coworker and I couldn't stop laughing the second he walked out, even more mad. Next story. I was a cashier at a grocery store. This guy with a full cart bickered and bullied employees until he was allowed to use my express checkout because he didn't want to wait in the regular lines, and my line only had 2 people in it. As soon as my floor manager allowed him and he had his cart unloaded, a tiny old lady with a walker who could barely stand got in line behind him. Everyone gave him dirty looks. He realized he effed up and tried to make a joke about it. Dead silence. I hope his saved time was worth being an a-hole. Next story. I worked in this fancy clothing store in this posh town at the seaside. It was a busy Saturday when suddenly a very pretentious girl walked in with her boyfriend, ignoring us as we greeted her and even giving my colleague a demeaning look. She went on to browse around in the store and eventually took some clothes with her in the changing booth. After a while, I notice a heated conversation arising from the booth between her and her boyfriend. I see the boyfriend running back and forth between the booth and some clothing racks. In the meantime, while me and my colleague were being chased away by her, she refused any help and didn't leave the booth, as if we were a couple of Ebola patients. So me and my colleague continue working and helping other customers. I was working the register when suddenly the girl turns up next to me, completely pissed off, and she starts ranting about how our store/brand really should work on the fitting of our clothes and how we are complete F-ups. I was completely caught off guard, and right when I wanted to ask her what the exact problem was, I see my colleague looking at the girl while bursting out this horribly loud laugh, tears and all. What had happened was that the girl had taken with her a clothing piece that she thought was a strapless dress. Well, it wasn't a dress, it was a skirt. The girl had tried on all sizes and got completely fed up, yelling at us and her boyfriend because the freaking dress won't fit. So she walked out in a crowded store, making a scene with the skirt pulled up over her tits. I have to admit, after she left, I laughed till crying. Next story. Was working at a restaurant and there was this family who were extremely trashy and didn't look like they had a lot of money despite ordering a bunch of expensive steaks and drinking a bunch of drinks. They were rude the whole time, treating me like I was their butler or slave, then asked for a manager to tell the manager that their steaks tasted rotten after they finished, and their drinks didn't taste like they had any alcohol in them. Again, finished. Just trying to get free food. My manager noticed the way they were treating me and knew they were full of crap and refused to comp their meal like they were demanding. They began yelling and cussing at him and me and ended up trying to leave without paying, only to have their car not start in the parking lot, and my manager called the police and one of them got arrested for disorderly conduct and drug possession, and the rest ended up walking after having their car towed. Next story. Worked at a gas station some odd years ago, and the week before it had been snowing a lot, so the gas tankers got delayed due to safety reasons. A customer came in, a pretty new Mercedes-Benz, something like a SLS 400 or something, and wanted the premium gas. I explained to him that the takers are delayed and we currently don't have any premium gasoline and that he could try the next station down the block. He started swearing at me personally like I have control over the gas delivery. He sped off, tires screeching, only to have his rear tire hit the curb. His rim got effed up really bad and couldn't drive it. I laughed at him. Next story. I was waiting at a hotel reception while a young staff member checked me in. A really obnoxious woman flounced over, interrupted what the girl was doing, and proceeded to female dog about the standard of the kettle in her room. She ranted on and on about only having a normal kettle until I told her to wise up and get in bloody line behind me. She shouted that she had been traveling all day and that the room was not a suitable standard. I pointed out it was a effing airport hotel. We'd all been traveling all day and that she should just get lost. By now, the girl at the desk was blood red and tearful. The woman banged her fist on the desk, demanded to see a manager, and then had a fit of coughing. She promptly crapped herself all through her beige trousers. She didn't hang around after that. Next story. I worked at a Pier 1 Imports as a teenager, outside Birmingham, Alabama. This was about 20 years ago, and transgender folks weren't on my radar at all. Anyway, it's near Christmas. I'm at the register with a line of customers waiting. There's a woman huffing about something near the end of the line. By the time she gets up to pay, she's being very loud about the customer behind her. "It's a man! It's a pervert in a dress!" The person behind her was very obviously born a man, but was in fact wearing a dress. It didn't really faze me as much as this woman who was doing her best to shame this person, who looked very hurt and embarrassed. And this lady was doing it while buying Christmas decorations, no less. Anyway, she's trying to convince me how wrong and gross it is, how this person shouldn't be in the store, etc. As she's ranting, I run her credit card. Declined. I try again. Declined. I have rarely in my life experienced the satisfaction as I did in that moment, looking up at her, smiling, and saying that her card had been declined. Her face got red, and she really just went off. "That's impossible! Try it again! You're doing it wrong!" At this point, she has the whole store looking at her. I try again and very loudly say it is, in fact, declined. She stormed out of there, knocking over a poor Santa statue by the door. I shared a smug grin with the customer behind her. Next story. Late to the party, but whatever. Back when I worked at a Blockbusters, we'd occasionally deal with thieves. The standard was just to let them go, not endanger employees or customers. One time, this guy grabbed some stuff and bolts. My manager runs after and points him out to two cops that had parked in our parking lot. They give chase. This guy dodges and weaves through people and traffic. He successfully crosses the street with cops on foot. Desperate to lose them, he jumps down some stairs to gain a lead but breaks both legs. Next story. Let me preface my story by saying I work near Baltimore. Yeah. So I manage a plus-size women's clothing store. We actually get a surprising amount of, let's call them non-traditional customers. Guys who need a dress for a charity show, cross-dressers, gender-fluid people, transgender women, and drag queens aren't unheard of. So a drag queen comes into the store to pick up some shoes they ordered online. They must have been either coming from or going to a show because they were still in full makeup. I get their name, and during our conversation, another customer walks in. I call out a greeting and say something like, "I'll be right with you." I go to the back room, and it takes a minute to go through all the web orders. I find the one I need and am on my way back to the counter, when the new customer throws her arm out to stop me from passing. She then says, "I'm a new customer and I've been here for 20 minutes and no one has spoken to me." A, I greeted her when she came in. B, she had only been in the store for 5 minutes at that point. I resigned myself to groveling, but before I could say anything, the drag queen stomps over, glares at the customer and says, "Female dog, she said hello to you," complete with sassy finger snaps. The queen then made a big show of thanking me for getting her package, and gave me a big, sparkly kiss on the cheek before she left. The other customer sheepishly paid for her Spanx and didn't make eye contact when I told her to have a good day. Next story. This didn't happen with a rude customer, but with a rude coworker. I work in a store with 10 different checkout lines. 2 are express, 2 self-checkout, but only one of which has all the cigarette/tobacco products in lockable glass cases behind it, meaning that if you want to buy that stuff, you either go through that line or you go through another line with the cashier. not self-checkout, and ask the cashier to go get you your cigs for you, at which point they go to the cigarette line, ask the cashier on it to get the smokes, or use their key to get them theirself in case the line isn't open. I have more than a few coworkers who smoke, and they have to buy their cigs in the same way as customers do. Employees are not allowed to get out their own cigarettes and check them out by themselves. They have to have another cashier ring them up for them. So one day, early morning, I'm working the checkout line with the tobacco behind it, and I notice this woman who works as a janitor/stalker is hovering behind me near the cigarettes. I know she isn't supposed to be near there, so I ask her, "Can I help you with something?" She tells me that she just wants to get some smokes, and I'm like, okay, no. If you want some cigarettes, you have to get in line and buy some that way, like everyone does. She gets pissed and asks me why I won't just let her get her own cigarettes, and I tell her again that I can sell her whatever she wants if she'll just get in line and pay for them. She huffs, rolls her eyes at me, and storms off. For the rest of the day, she totally has it out for me. Throughout the day, I have other cashiers telling me that she's talking crap about me in the break room left and right. My manager comes up to me and says that the woman made a complaint that I refuse to sell her cigarettes because she's black. I go, "What the F?" and explain what actually happened and go on with my job. Then at one point, there's a big lull in business and I take a quick break, putting on my away light at the register and making sure to lock up the cigarette cases when I go, as is policy, so I can go to the bathroom, and this woman comes out of nowhere and blocks the door, refuses to let me in, and shoves the handle end of her mop into my chest and tells me I'm not allowed to use the bathroom, and some crap about how I think I'm so much better than her because I'm a cashier and she's a janitor. I'm like, "You realize there are security cameras right in this hallway, right?" And she jumps and takes off again, and I go pee. And this crap just carries on all day, and she gives me these nasty looks every time she comes by, which is often enough and more than usual that I think she's walking by my register just so she can glare at me. But the day ends and I give my register to someone else and go home. Next day, first thing in the morning, as soon as I get into work, another cashier informs me that the woman was fired late last night because apparently she'd been caught on camera stealing a few packs of cigarettes out of the tobacco case when the cashier who relieved me at the register eventually took a break herself but didn't lock the cases up. The cashier who didn't lock up got a warning but didn't lose her job. Next story. When I was a cashier at Borders, I had this one customer that had either put something on reserve or had special ordered. I remember them getting really rude because I couldn't find it and asked them multiple times what the name was. It eventually turned out that it was placed under her husband's name, so it wasn't my fault I couldn't find it at all. She didn't apologize or anything, so it felt really nice when I swiped her card and it was declined. She felt so embarrassed and just stormed off. Next story. I used to work at Target. We were always told if a parent has their kid standing in the cart, we should ask the parent to have their kid sit down. Most of the time, the parents are fine with it. This one lady was not having it. She was outside and just put her kid in the cart. At the entrance, where the ground had shifted a bit and there was a small lip to get into the store, and of course, the kid is standing at the very front of the cart. I politely warn the customer of the lip and the kid should sit down because there's a very high chance he'll fall out. She tells me to go F yourself. You can give me advice about my kid when you become a parent yourself, while pointing her finger at me. All right, whatever. We can't do anything after that. She walks towards the door. Kid is still standing and hits the lip. Kid flips out of the cart and bashes his face on the floor. If anyone knows about the carpeting in the entrance vestibules, it's basically like having a piece of paper draped over a slab of concrete. There's no padding whatsoever. Kid had a giant lump on his forehead and must have hit his nose too, since he was bleeding everywhere. I told my managers and the lady got the help she needed for her kid, but was still being extremely rude. F it. Told you so, female dog. Next story. I used to work at a bank branch. A client was being very disrespectful to a female staff member. Literally 2 minutes later, our bank was robbed at the teller he was using. His $5,000 was taken right off the counter before it could be negotiated. Eventually, it was covered by the bank, but at the time, I can imagine him being worried. Next story. In Hawaii at the resort bar, kid that looks about 18, I'd have served him, orders a drink, barman asks for ID, hands over ID, sorry, this is expired. Kid loses his crap, insults the barman, threatens his livelihood, etc. Fast forward 2 days. Sat in the bar at the airport. Same douche comes in, orders a drink. Lady behind the bar asks for ID, hands over ID. She looks at it and goes to hand it back. I pipe up, check the expiration date. Jerk move, but karma is, as they say, a female dog. Next story. Worked for a sushi bar for a few years. They do half-price sushi hour most weekdays for dining customers. It's such a good deal, especially for how high quality the food is. It was an especially busy day, people waiting, etc. This woman and her daughter come in and stress that they're in a hurry. My daughter has cheerleading, but want the half price. Good luck. Full house, but whatever. Customers equals money, yo. So the lady gets angry when her food takes longer than 15 minutes. She asks if she can get her food to go, which I then explain that the food would then be full priced. We get into an argument. She's getting angry and beginning to yell at me in front of her embarrassed daughter while I'm meekly standing there, unsure of what to do. Well, I ordered dine in. You're asking me to go. It doesn't matter if you were sitting at a table while asking. She's getting louder and more annoying, and I'm starting to panic. My anxiety was really bad at the time, when suddenly my boss chimes in. And by chimes in, I mean she started ripping this woman a new one. You see, my old boss just happened to be working behind the sushi bar that summer. She told the woman to stop yelling at me, and that if she wanted her damn half-price sushi, she would have to sit and wait like everyone else. Boss apologized to the other customers and made sure I was okay. Lady was shocked and now super embarrassed, since the entire restaurant was now judging her. She quietly sat and waited for her sushi. The daughter apologized to me, and that table ended up leaving a pretty good tip. My old boss is the nicest woman in the world. She still gives me free food whenever I go up for some sushi. She also has a bunch of regulars who she always makes time for, but don't piss her off, because she will become a scary, scary person in mere seconds. Next story. Worked at a liquor store. Customer care came in extremely intoxicated. Couldn't really speak. Stumbling everywhere. We refused to sell to him and he flipped out. Ended up kicking him out with threat of calling the police. He went down the street to another store, and as he walked past our store, he yelled some very mean things at us and immediately tripped, shattering the bottle he bought on the sidewalk. What a glorious sight. You know, as they say, karma is a boomerang, and, sometimes it takes a little while for it to come full circle, but it's those immediate full circle moments that are just so satisfying. Next story. In the auto repair business, we must deal with a lot of passive aggressiveness from people displeased with having to shell out money for their cars. Once, a couple arrived to pick up a car which was parked in the first spot nearest the street. The husband was great and had approved the needed repairs in stride. The wife was a raging female dog, debating every line item of the estimate, asking pointless questions, demanding a cheaper price, threatening to take the car elsewhere or just get a new one. Anyway, the man made his way toward the office, but the woman made a beeline for the car, found the keys stashed inside, threw the plastic seat cover to the wind, then started it up and drove off before the bill had been paid, cutting the turn too sharp and scraping the entire passenger side of the car badly on the low concrete planter. I saw this happen. The husband didn't. Never saw them again. Next story. It was about 3 years ago. An employee, we'll call him Dave, was working at my retail store when two customers walk in at about the same time, one black, one white. Dave was being trained on register after being there for only a month or so, with the manager standing behind him. The two customers get to the register at about the same time, but the black man beat him there. The black man then has the audacity to ask how good the product was before he bought it, and the white man behind him said, "Do I really have to wait for this effing N-word to be done?" The black man was unfazed, but Dave said, "Sir, please don't use slurs like that, or I'm gonna have to ask you to leave." White man goes, "Oh, big man? You gonna make me leave, big man, 'cause I called this N-word a effing N-word?" Dave, 6'5", "Yes, I'm a big man, and you have to leave now." White man, "Effing fight me then, big man. I'll effing destroy you." Dave, "All right, I will. Let me clock out and grab my stuff, and I'll meet you outside." The white man was a little surprised by the fact that he accepted. Dave turned to the manager and said, "Thank you so much for the opportunity, but I'm afraid I have to quit." Manager says, "Dave, I get it, but you don't have to do this." Dave says, "Yes, I do." The white man was getting himself pumped up outside as Dave clocked out, grabbed his coat and his Pepsi, walked outside to where he sucker punched the white man in the cheekbone, sprawling him out onto the curb, and Dave drove off. Next story. I used to return customer credit cards by setting them on the square podium used to swipe them, so they ended up right by them when I swung the screen around for them to sign and such. One lunch rush, takeout restaurant, one lady decided this was an offense of the highest order and yelled at me for not placing it directly in her hand. I stupidly engaged her and tried to explain that I did that for everybody, which got me a continued lecture about how she's a customer and good service is doing what she wants and so on. There were about a dozen people eating at our tables and 5 people in the line behind her, so she was straight hamming it up, making sure everyone saw her putting me in my place. Unfortunately for her, the dramatic performance proved to be a bit too distracting and she stormed out with her infant. This was of course noticed by pretty much everyone in the building since she had just made herself the center of attention. One of the customers even had to run after her and stop her from driving away. For the record, there's no real subtle way to pick up a full-size child carrier. Next story. I had a woman come into my bank one day years ago in mid-August and try and cash a check. Said check looked like it had been written by a 4-year-old. We went through the protocol as mandated by our organization, calling the issuer and verifying all data. While we were going through this procedure, the woman goes off on a tantrum. She's ripping the little pens with chains from the little desks, throwing deposit slips around, demanding she speak to the president of the bank, and verbally abusing all the employees. Likewise, she looks to have done enough speed to stay up for a week straight. We're finally able to get a hold of the issuer of the check. Lo and behold, it's a good check. We cash it, thank her for her patience. As she's storming out cursing, 2 officers walk in and identify her as the owner of a car in the parking lot. Said car had a small child, no more than 2, locked inside the entire time, 20 minutes, in August. Some good people called the cops, broke out the window and rescued the kid and had that female dog arrested. I hope to God that little kid has found a new home or that its mom has cleaned up her act. Next story. Not exactly retail, but food service. At a college football game, my coworker was chewed out by an alumni because the hot chocolate wasn't chocolatey enough. All she and I could really do was sit there and apologize because there was nothing we could really do, until the bartender chimed in. This bartender is a former high school teacher, currently a substitute school teacher for all grades K through 12. And the look she shot this man could have immediately shut up the cockiest of teenagers. Anyway, she put on her scolding face and warned him, if you continue yelling at these girls over something they can't control, I'm going to have to ask you and all your friends to leave. I will not tolerate anyone abusing my coworkers. The guy immediately clammed up and hurriedly walked away with his tail tucked between his legs. Next story. Once I saw a woman being really terrible to her kids. They were maybe 6 and 9, but she was swearing at them, things I've never heard said to an adult, and calling them names. They were both crying hysterically just trying to eat their pizza. The only other table in the place was a trio of construction workers sitting behind them. I had asked the woman several times to calm down, but she would just say she wasn't hurting anyone and basically to butt out. She would swear at me and threw a piece of chicken at me as I walked away. I called my manager up and he didn't like to remove customers, so he wanted to wait and see if this continued. Then she smacked one of the little girls on the back of the head. Before my manager or I could react, one of the construction workers walked over and he asked the mom to join him at the bar. I think she thought he was hitting on her because she was all smiles and flirty. As soon as she was away from the kids, he told her, if I see you lay a finger on those kids again, I'll do the same thing to you but 10 times worse. Have a nice evening. She immediately left and they followed her to the door. I can only hope she learned something. Next story. Used to work at a check cashing / credit card cash withdrawal booth at a native casino. One guy was really drunk and being a real twat about how long it took me to get his cash, told me I needed to hurry the F up or he'd make sure I lost my job. I did hurry, and hurried through the balance on 5 credit cards as he kept coming back because he was getting his ass handed to him at the craps table. I guess at some point during the night, Visa realized this person had blown through about $10K at a casino in a matter of hours, so they put holds on every one of his cards, meaning the merchant has to take the card from the employer. I know this because I ran and kept every single last card he had on him. Not happy at all. Another guy who was also a drunk had a limited interlock device license, used to come in all the time and act like a craphead, taking it out on us if he was having a bad day at the tables. One night, he comes in with a taxi driver in tow. He was meaning to stiff the driver, but the driver just got out and followed him. He cashes a check and counts out what to give the driver, but is so drunk he hands the driver the cash he meant to keep. The remainder of $500, probably about $450 to $475. The driver looked me in the eyes, and with my eyes, I motioned for him to go as he turns around and walks away, and the drunk is none the wiser that night. A few nights later, and a little more sober, he comes in and asks how much he got out. I tell him and mention that he gave it to the driver. He's pissed and asks why I let him. I say, well, you were really drunk and being a major craphead to him. I just figured you were making it right by giving him cash. I guess that's fair. I need to quit drinking so much. He replies and walks away, and I never see him again. I hope he did get it together. Now, to even it out, there was a guy who comes in with his mom one day. He says that his dad was a really strict Christian and would never allow his mom to gamble. Now that his dad died, he brought his mom to experience something new. Takes out $200 and gives his mom $180 and says, I love you, Mom. Now go have some fun. He then takes the $20 and puts it in this Wheel of Fortune game show machine that sits right next to the booth. He pushes the button and I hear it hit a jackpot. Dude won almost $20K. Such a cool thing to happen to a cool guy doing something good for his mom. So I know that this video has focused mostly on bad karma, but good karma is also very much a thing. Whatever kind of energy you put out into the world is what you're going to receive in turn. So glad to hear that this guy who's just looking out for his mom got 20 grand. That's pretty cool. Next story. Sold computers and such for Circuit City back in the day. Was fairly new and the only one on shift as someone called in sick. This is around the time the iPod Nano came out, so everyone wanted to see them. Had been working with a group of people selling to each of them for over an hour when some guy comes up to me and asks why I've been ignoring his wife. Apparently, they went into the back corner of the store and stood there not talking to anyone. They wanted a high-end laptop, but didn't want me to get commission because I ignored them. We didn't make commission at the time, so I didn't care in the slightest. Got the laptop out for a manager to ring up, and their check got declined. I did a happy dance. Next story. Used to sell mattresses, which no one really wants to buy. No one's jacked about buying. They do it because they have to. I get it. Everyone that works there gets it. One Saturday, this cranky old dude comes in, and before anyone can greet him, he's complaining about literally everything. We're trying to help him, but he shoos anyone who approaches him away. Of course, then he turns around to complain about no one helping him. Dude is old, like I said, and he can't get around well. We recommend he not lay down on all foam mattress if he won't let anyone help him up. He says something rude and blows us off. He hobbles over to a foam mattress, one that's right next to a wall. This wall also has a TV display sticking about 8 inches out from the wall, and it constantly plays ads. Old man lays down on the bed and immediately hates it. He sits up, and he realizes it will be difficult for a man in his condition to get off the bed, but he won't ask for help. Dude launches himself off the mattress and straight into the TV display. My manager loses it. The guy tries to bark at us, but everyone else is too busy trying not to laugh, so he gives up and cranky walks out of the store. Next story. I used to work at a RadioShack in my area during college. It was never really busy on Sundays, so I was generally the only worker there. On this particular Sunday morning, I was incredibly tired from the night before, so I was kind of pissed about having to come in on a day when no one was going to show up. I got even more pissed when I pulled into the parking lot and was instantly greeted by a man who proceeded to start yelling at me. I put on my sales associate smile and kindly asked what the problem was. I've been waiting here for 30 minutes and you're late. I wasn't late. I was actually 15 minutes early. He then followed closely behind me to the door and was screaming at me the whole day. I'm never going back to this store and stuff like that. When I finally got the door open, I let him know that I had to turn the alarm off and count the register before I could help him. This also made him angry, but at this point I didn't care. I was nice enough to try and help him 15 minutes before we opened. Least he could do was not be an a-hole. Anyway, I finally get to help the guy out and he wants to know about batteries. Cool. Easy. I proceed to show him our batteries and their prices. He goes off and starts screaming and yelling about how everything was outrageous and the prices were terrible and apparently I had treated him like crap. He started to pound his fist on the counter and started yelling again about how we didn't have any name brand batteries. We did. And how RadioShack was communist by trying to push their batteries on their customers. I calmly told him that there was nothing I could do and asked if I could help him with anything else. He stormed off, punched the battery display, and proceeded to slam face first into our door. Turns out that since he was yelling and screaming at me while I was unlocking the doors, I forgot to unlock the other one. He quickly looked around to see if I saw him. I just waved and told him to have a great day. He spun out of the parking lot and I never saw him again. Next story. I work at Starbucks. One day I was working the drive-thru. We were having longer than normal wait times as we were short-staffed. This one guy gets up to the window in a huff and starts yelling at me / complaining about his wait. I apologize and tell him his total. He literally throws his credit card at me, and it bounces off the bottom of the window directly underneath his truck. We look at each other for a second, and then he sends his daughter out of his truck to look for it. I inform them it's right under the truck, so he moves his truck up a bit, gets out, picks it up, and hands it to me softly without making eye contact, as he's squeezing himself between the tail end of his truck and the wall of the building. Being pretty embarrassed as everyone behind him is watching, it was pretty satisfying. Next story. Obligatory didn't happen to me, but I was there. In the queue in the hardware store, and the lady serving had a sign on the till which said that she was deaf. Beefcake behind me in the queue is trying to get the cashier's attention, huffing and puffing and talking crap at her for being slow. The person she was serving had a cart full of items. All of a sudden, he really loses his temper and screams at the cashier, "What the F's wrong with you? Are you effing deaf?" I have never, ever seen so many people turn around in unison and give one person the death stare. My mom, who I was with at the time, pipes up, pointing to the sign on the till, "What the F's wrong with you? Can you not effing read?" The guy goes redder than I've ever seen anyone go and skulks out, avoiding eye contact with everyone, to which he received a generous round of applause from everyone at the tills, including the other cashiers. Next story. Way back when I used to be a retail slave, I worked at an electronics retailer, still in business. We had some guys going around trying to lift DVDs. They were cutting the barcodes off to remove the sensors so they wouldn't go off on their way out. LP notices and starts sending over floor reps to see how they're doing, if they need help, etc. Finally, LP goes over and just hands them a handbasket. Because they had nothing in their hands, it was showing them we knew. So they start wandering around, ditching the DVDs as they go, and as soon as they drop one, and the employee comes up and grabs it. So they start freaking out. They dump the rest and just book it towards the door at full speed. No one chased because they ditched all the merchandise. As they exit, one of the dudes turns around and starts flipping everyone off, yelling, "F the store name!" As he's doing this, he steps off the curb onto the front driveway in the parking lot and promptly gets hit by a car. It was in the lot, so it was only going hard enough to knock him over, but he had to scramble to hit feet and keep running. Next story. I was selling a woman a Nintendo 3DS for her son. I had given the son the box while I was ringing everything up because he was so happy to get his new toy. When it came time to talk about the accidental damage protection plan, she gave me an unreasonably hard time, making it sound like I accused her child of not being able to take care of his toys. The second she said that, the kid threw the box across the store into some shelves and knocked down a bunch of games. She bought the 4-year plan. Next story. Working at a music store, we do a lot of business in high-end band instruments, tubas, clarinets, etc. We only put them on sale for a couple weeks every year, and we're nearing the end of the sale. Older guy comes in to look at trumpets, and he's ogling the most expensive one we had on display, really standing there for a good few minutes. My coworker asks him if he wants any help or if he's interested in trying it out. And the customer just starts talking crap about the expensive trumpet. It's nice, but I'm really not that impressed. $3,400? That's too much for that thing. Yeah, right. Right at that moment, we get a phone call asking us for that same model trumpet, and the customer's willing to pay for it in full over the phone to reserve it. Normally, we would have 3 or 4 of these horns around, but the sale was good, and the very last one was getting crap-talked by this old guy. My other coworker just strolls up behind the dude and plucks it off the wall. And the old dude just goes effing ballistic, yelling, calling us all incompetents, etc. Turns out he really wanted it, but was pretending not to order to try and get us to lower the price. There was nothing we could do for him. The sale was only on stuff we had in stock. He eventually ordered one, costing him a few extra $100. We laughed about that one for a long time. Next story. A group of guys came into my restaurant who were celebrating this rather rotund man's divorce. Needless to say, any pretty server in the building was about to have an uncomfortable visit. I kept an eye on their table, but can't stand to stare before it becomes obvious I'm supervising them and not my staff. So I ran to the kitchen to check up on the cooks. I was gone maybe 15 seconds when a server comes to get me to cut the recent divorcee off because he just grabbed one of the girls' butts. Not cool, dude. I go out to the table to take them their checks and ask them to leave. I tell the table I had a complaint from one of the staff and said there would be no more drinks served to them and that they needed to pay their tabs and leave. Now, I'm not a small guy, but the 6 of them could easily cause more than a ruckus. Once their glazed eyes realize what's happening and that they weren't a strip club, the divorcee shouts, "Oh yeah? And what the F is you gonna do if we don't?" He starts to stand up, but is a bit too husky for his gut to clear the lip of the table, and he spills 2 full pitchers of beer and 6 almost empty glasses all over himself and his friends, as he slips back into his chair with a thud. I didn't have to say another word. His one friend threw down $100, apologized, and drug his beer-covered friend shamefully out the side door. Next story. I work in a cell phone/computer repair retail chain. We had this lady come in the other day. We'll call her Wanda. Now, we do buy phones and other small electronics, but only if we're going to be able to sell them. We aren't going to buy your crappy iPhone 4, and we sure as hell aren't giving you $600 no matter how new your device is. Wanda calls first, asking for quotes on 3 phones and a laptop. 2 of the phones are older and kind of crappy, after a quick Google. The laptop is an old compact, which should tell you why I refused it. Wanda came into the store an hour later. Apparently, our other location in the next town had quoted her $50 for all 3 phones and $150 for the crap laptop. I knew this was bullcrap because the managers in that store are competent. I tell her I can give her $30 for the nicest phone, her personal phone, which will become relevant soon. I can't take the 2 crappy ones, and I absolutely will not be taking the old compact that runs slow with a chunk broken out of the side. She starts bickering about how I quoted her X amount of money and how she can't believe we can't give her more and we have to take these items, blah, blah, blah. Guys, it was 80 degrees in that store. Our AC had broken and we were hot, sweaty, and pissy. And Wanda just would not shut up. I ended up giving her $50 for the damn phone. Seemingly satisfied, she left, saying she'd be going to the other store to sell her other 2 phones and the laptop. About 30 minutes later, she was back again, this time hawking a sob story to my coworker. He dealt with her the second time because I was close to beating her with the damn laptop, about needing money for her sick daughter. She bickered at him too, until he finally bought the laptop for $10. Then, finally, she was gone. Long story short, we checked the phone and laptop for resale quality. We find a text on the phone that said, "Give me back my laptop and all the things you stole from me, or town police will be called." We also looked up her name and found out she'd been wanted for theft back in 2010 in our district. Cops were called, owner was called, and laptop was given safely back to him, though we did have to look him in the eye after accidentally finding his adult content stash. Now, this woman has an arrest warrant for more. Hot 20-somethings who paid her $60 to get the F out and never come back. Next story. Wasn't retail or service, but when I worked private security for a large theme park, I was called one day by another officer who was dealing with a family that was demanding their supervisor because they were mad their son had done something stupid that was resulting in him being ejected from the park. So I show up and hear what had occurred and explain the same thing they've already been told and how they're going to have to leave. Basically, the policy was, people do petty dumb crap as the kid had done, you tell them to leave for the day. After a 24-hour criminal trespass warning expires, they're okay to come back to the park. With 40,000 people coming to the gate every day, there just isn't any way we could ever keep track of these people unless we revoked their season passes, if they had one. Dad starts losing his crap, calling us all names in the book. How we were being racist. Never mind, the original officer was of the same race as Angry Dad. Dad proceeded to call 911 and wasn't budging until he spoke with the cops about our unjustified actions we were bringing upon him. We worked with the local police department and always had officers in the park, so very quickly 2 PD officers show up and I explained our side and he began explaining his side. Officers ask for his ID and they run him through the system, and guess who comes back with active warrants? Why, none other than Angry Dad himself. So Dad had called the cops on himself. He promptly received a pair of silver bracelets and was taken away for the county jail. Justice boners were promptly issued to all officers involved. Next story. Used to work at GameStop and had a guest wanting to trade a copy of some older version of Call of Duty. He really didn't like the value and demanded to know how it could be so low. While this takes place in a GameStop, it was actually during a killer trade promotion, so the value actually was decent, all things considered. I explained that it was an older version and it's not selling much anymore. He insists there's heavy demand still and turns around asking who wants to buy it. Everyone within earshot laughed him down and he left embarrassed. Yeah, I'm not sure if this is still the case because I don't really play COD anymore, but at one point they were literally releasing a brand new game every single year, if not every 10 months or so. So it's like, yeah, the latest and greatest is going to get dated pretty quickly and their fan base quickly moves on to those new games. So totally see this happening. Next story. A customer was ripping all my packaged prawns out of my fridges as they were partially frozen, and she was upset that they weren't fresh. So took pictures and was yelling and telling people around her that our supermarket was deceiving people. I then had to explain to her that they're caught in Thailand and therefore have to be frozen while they travel over here, UK, and that they would be green and gone if they weren't frozen as soon as caught. Well, her face was a picture as due to her causing a commotion, there is a crowd of people around us and saw her get owned on simple common sense. Next story. I was working in a pub the day the Thailand tsunami hit, and we had a bucket behind the grill to raise some money towards the relief. Massive duckhead regular tries to impress his friends by tipping me a drink, to which I thank him, but suggests he instead puts the tip in the bucket to help with the unfolding tragedy. He loses it, calls me all sorts of names, and why the F should we help people in other countries anyway? 30 minutes later, his phone rang and he discovered a close friend had been in the area of one of the beaches, and the outlook became more grim as the day went on. Suddenly, he seemed quite keen to add tips with each round. I felt a bit sorry for him, but he was a massive idiot. Next story. I was a waitress and asked a table if they wanted anything to drink. Iced tea, Pepsi, water perhaps. They said no drinks. Later, I take their meal order and wrap it up with, "So should I bring over 2 waters?" They again said no, they didn't want anything. Kind of rude about it too, considering I just wanted to bring them water. Live in drought state, we're technically not supposed to bring it without asking you. Anyway, female dog chokes on bread for a few coughs and her daughter has to assist her and rush to me to get some water. Then has the nerve to say I shouldn't ever serve tables without a drink. Next story. A doctor of mine, I recruit doctors, TLDR, was determined that I was hiding his expenses, from which I sent on to the department administrators quite literally months before. He called me to yell, tell me I was incompetent, and he wanted to speak to my manager. Unfortunately for him, I have a dump file filled with every email I send and receive. I happily put him on with my manager, who explained that no, I'm not incompetent or hiding his form, and that he was copied into the emails about who would deal with it. Not only did he get an apology out of him, he actually wrote me an email apologizing afterwards too. It was so good, I wish I could have had it on toast. Next story. I work at a library and have 2 very short stories. One of my old co-workers, who has since retired, was known for being a bit outspoken. She was great to have around when people were being rude. I don't remember the exact specifics of what transpired, but it ended up where she was called over to intervene during a complaint with a patron. Suffice to say, the complaint transformed into an argument, and they both ended up getting upset. The patron eventually left, and I went to talk to my coworker to find out what happened. Not 30 seconds later, the phone rings. My coworker picked up and says, "I'm the one you were talking to." Apparently, the patron had called to file a complaint against her while standing right outside of the entrance, in full view. Our office was next to the entrance, and we were able to see him calling. And 2, had a graduate assistant who insisted that she returned an item before it was due. We filed our usual paperwork and let her know that she could check back with us periodically to see if we had found it. Otherwise, we would contact her after a set amount of time with what her options would be, pay or replace the item. As standard, we asked them to double check their home, office, car, anywhere they would have used the item just in case. Around 80% of the time, people have just returned a different item with a similar sounding title or subject matter. No big deal, since it happens to us so often. She kept calling and emailing, saying she was absolutely 100% certain she had returned it. Got pretty livid and rude, too. A couple of weeks later, one of my coworkers happened to be helping out at her front desk and recognized the grad student walk by and tried to drop a book off at our return slot. If we're at the front desk, a lot of times we'll let people know that they can just hand the items to us rather than dropping it in the return slot because it's easier for us. The student starts acting shifty, saying that she'd rather drop it in the return slot, it's no big deal, etc. Turns out, the student found the book at home and tried to stealthily return it, hoping we wouldn't recognize her and all the crap she put everyone through. Didn't apologize to anyone either. We also had a guy squealing like a pig and yelling over the phone at us once too.